3 common mistakes that listing agents make. In this video, I'm gonna dive into 3 of the most common mistakes that listing agents make, which it's not exclusively newly licensed agents that make these mistakes. Crazy enough, some seasoned veterans actually do this as well. But nonetheless, no matter where you're at on the journey, it's my hope that in seeing this, that you never make one of these mistakes because you know better and can be better prepared going into the situation to not only win the listing, but to truly provide the best service and experience for the seller you have the opportunity to work with. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Tyler Roicki. I help people build income and wealth in real estate, and I run an international real estate team at eXp Realty. If you get any value whatsoever out of this video, all I'd ask is that you like, comment, and hit that subscribe button so I can continue to share more tips and resources with you in the time ahead. And with that being said, let's dive into the video. So we're gonna break down 3 mistakes, the most common ones I see being made by listing agents. And the first of which is misguiding the seller on price. And this can happen for several reasons, but bottom line is it could be not taking the proper amount of time to prepare going into an appointment, or it could be being in a position where you're telling someone what they want to hear more so than what they need to hear. But for whatever the reason, I believe it's important to be honest and to lay out the facts. Not as much of an opinion, but more so the facts of, assessing the market activity, being able to show what that activity is in the neighborhood, the most relevant comps, and to really present that to the seller and to get what their take is on the price based on that information. So it's my opinion as a listing agent, if you want to have the strongest opportunity to help someone forward with the next steps, it's going to be on their team. And one surefire way to not be on a seller's team is to go in disagreeing with them on the price. So I always recommend putting yourself in a position where you can convey the facts, share the data, and then pose a question to them of what they think the home should be priced at given that information, and go from there. Because if they give you a number that they're thinking, especially if it's based on the facts, then you can include it in the range of pricing and what you're going to suggest to do on that property, right? And so that way you're not going to be at a point where you're in disagreement, because if you get to a point where you're coming in with your price and it's not the one that they have in mind, that's going to set it up for another agent to come in and capitalize on that opportunity and win that business. Because, in an event that you come in with your price, even if it's correct, let's say there's another agent out there that meets with them and gives them a price that's more in line with what they were thinking. Even if it's wrong, guess who's going to win the business? Not you. So would you rather be right, or would you rather have the opportunity to help someone with the process and to have the best possible experience along the way and ultimately get the best possible result? Because this is how you can position yourself to do it. So bottom line is, don't misguide the seller on the price. Share the facts, lay it out, present it, share the details, and figure out what they're thinking given that information, and take it from there. The second mistake I see listing agents make is not setting proper expectations with the seller. And so the biggest reason, if somebody ends up firing their real estate agent, or if they don't achieve the result they want, whatever the situation might be, it almost always comes down to the same thing: communication, lack of communication. And that's actually the other component of this. So one thing is setting expectations up front, and there's a whole nother part of it that's not being as communicative as you could or should be. And this is something very commonly that happens. A lot of people fail to set proper expectations up front. There's a lot of ways that could play out, but one example relates to our last point, the pricing. So what happens if you don't set an expectation that there may be a need to do a price adjustment down the road, or if you want to put better vocabulary on it, a price improvement? Well, if you don't set that expectation up front, if there comes a time where you need to have a price conversation after it's listed because the activity is not there, guess whose fault it is if you didn't talk about this up front and set the expectation? It's your fault, because you didn't price it correctly to begin with. Now, on the other hand, as you're discussing price, if you set an expectation of, okay, we can come to the market for that price you're thinking, Mr. or Mrs. Seller. But let's say that we get to a point where we're X amount down the road, 2-3 weeks down the road, and we're not seeing activity that's going to result in a sell. We need to do a Y% price improvement. And so that's where you're going to adjust the price by a certain percentage to bring it down to a point where there's more buyers, because there's a tendency that the lower your price, the more buyers it will potentially appeal to. And there's a right price for every property. You know, different properties are different value, but you know, there's a greater portion of the market it's going to appeal to if it's priced competitively or where it needs to be versus being priced too high, or I mean, even to a point too low. You're just going to be very high on the activity. And so there's a sweet spot, but if you're off on that sweet spot, that's where the price improvement will come into play. And honestly, the only way to know for sure if you're off or not is based on what the actual activity ends up being. But if you set that expectation up front, it's going to put you in a strong position to be able to move forward when that time comes, if there needs to be an adjustment. And then you're not the bad person. It was part of what you already talked about would happen and part of the strategy at that point. And so always set expectations for everything. Like always, like never leave the sellers wondering what is going to happen next. It's always setting forth and letting them know what happens next before it happens at every single point along the way, with the listing process, with the closing process, with everything. And that's a big part of where your listing presentation comes into play. It's your opportunity to set expectations, and then from that point on, you have an opportunity to be very proactive in your communication and make sure they're never at a point where they're guessing or wondering. Always be ahead of the ball, and it's probably going to be a good experience for the seller if you do that, because you'll be communicative. They'll always feel like everything they need is being communicated and taken care of. Now, the third common mistake I see listing agents make, and this one blows my mind, especially when I see seasoned agents do this, which is not hiring a home stager and then also not using the right photographer. So the stager thing, I just feel like some people maybe didn't learn this from the same way, or didn't have the same kind of mentorship or people leading them to really show how to do this. But any home that's owner occupied, that's being sold that way, should have a home stager that comes through. That's someone with an eye for interior design that is going to be willing to get compensated for 1 or 2 hours of their time. So they're going to come in and do a staging consultation, and the right person is going to be able to look at and utilize the furniture that's in there and to help make some suggestions that's going to help make the home look as good as possible. In fact, like a model home, to the best of their ability using the existing furniture, right? So you'd be amazed at how much a home will be transformed if you have someone with an eye for this come in and make their recommendations and you follow through with it. It's a night and day difference. It makes all the difference, and it makes the home ready for photography. If you don't do this, it's hit or miss. And most people don't have an eye for interior design. Most homes will not look the way they could potentially look if you brought in an interior designer, aka a home stager, to do a 1 to 2 hour consultation. So you're gonna pay them for an hour or two of their time, and then the seller's gonna follow through with as many of the recommendations as they're willing to. And after that's all done and the home is cleaned and ready, you'll bring in the right real estate photographer. Keyword right. Not just a photographer. Bringing in a photographer is not enough. And probably, I hope I wouldn't need to say this, but taking pictures with your phone is, no, that's not what we're talking about. That should never ever happen, especially with an owner-occupied home. If it's an investor special that's cluttered full of stuff and is being sold as is, maybe if it's a low enough price point. But any other home, we need professional photography, and it's got to be the right photographer. So this should be someone who is a real estate photographer, someone who specializes in real estate, probably only shoots real estate. That's just what they do, and they've been doing it for a while. They've got it dialed in. They know every angle. They know how to make it look as good as possible in the pictures, and they do it, and they're doing professional HDR photography. The lighting looks great. The color looks great. They get all the details locked in. In fact, it's the right person if their photos are in real estate magazines or the same quality and caliber of those who are. And that's what you should be striving for. Anything less, it's just not worth it. You're still gonna pay for it. It's not a huge price difference between your run-of-the-mill photographer and what the best real estate photographer in your local market is going to charge to shoot a regular home. It's not a huge price difference. You're talking about maybe $50 to $100 difference. Like, this is not a spot to save money in your marketing costs. Like, you have the opportunity to get more buyers in the door and to get your seller a better result on their sell if you do this right. So it just, like I said, it blows my mind that people actually mess this up, especially those who are seasoned in the business. And I think those who are seasoned that do, I think they're just operating in a time that they're still of a mindset that this isn't important, because there used to be a time where people weren't online making all their decisions, and now they are. You have a split second to capture a buyer's attention as they're scrolling on their phone looking at the new listings. You've got to make that split second count, and you're going to do that if you have the best possible photography, especially if the home's staged and you catch more than 1 second of their attention in the process. So this third thing is an absolute must, and that rounds out the 3 most common mistakes I see listing agents making. And to summarize actually what to do instead: 1, guide the seller correctly on the pricing. Share the actual data and information on what's happening, comparable sales, and then ask them where they think their home should be priced once they have that information. Don't put yourself in a spot where the two of you can disagree on price. Get their thoughts on the price after you walk them through the data, and then based on what they say, walk them through, the next steps in the process there, and how their home stacks up to what they're thinking, and getting a plan in place from there. Second thing is set expectations. As far as what happens next in the process, set all the expectations you need up front in the listing consultation, but also set forth what happens next at every point along the way. Make sure they're never guessing, and always be proactive in your communication. In fact, over communicate. It's far better than under communicating. They'll have a better experience, and ultimately you'll never be in a spot where they're telling their friends on why they won't work with you again. As long as you're super communicative, helpful, that should never happen. And then the third thing is hire a home stager. Hire someone who can come in, spend 1 to 2 hours with your sellers, do a staging consultation, and once all those recommendations are put into place, hire the right professional real estate photographer, someone whose photos are magazine grade, and someone who's really just got the right eye on it and brings the quality and caliber that makes your listings look as good, if not better, than anyone else's in your local market area. If you do those things, you'll avoid making the 3 most common mistakes that listing agents will make, and you'll be putting yourself in a position where you can really bring the highest value to the sellers you have the opportunity to work with, and truly bring them the best possible experience along the way. And so I hope that helps. That being said, if there's anything I can do to potentially help you now or in the future, go ahead and reach out to me. You'll find my email in the description below, along with some other helpful resources for you. And if you found this video helpful, please like the video, drop me a comment, and hit that subscribe button so that I can continue to share more tips and resources with you in the time ahead. And all that being said, thank you so much for watching the video, and until next time, I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.